excited to meet you all today. And like Claire said, we met back in Birmingham there last year. It feels like 5 minutes ago, to be honest with you. I came in to talk about a wiggly route as such into cybersecurity. So my goal today is to give you a little bit of insight into cybersec, into what it's like for the women in this side of things, and how we're represented. And then, of course, my journey. And the reason I talk about my journey into it is because it's far from linear. So for anybody who maybe is uh, taken a new career path, returning to work, has had time out, has studied something different. And, oftentimes we think, oh, well, do I have to start all over again? Or is this the only thing that I can do now that that's the thing that I've studied? And I like to talk about this just to show people that no, it's not, absolutely not at all. Um, there's a lot of variety and a lot of pivoting in cybersecurity. So the more differences, the better. The more different backgrounds, the better. The more diversity, the better. As with most things, but even more so in the cybersecurity side of things. So for my journey, I think the most interesting part is the qualifications side of it. So when I did study, quite a few years ago, I actually studied theatre studies. So I spent a lot of time doing stage management, writing scripts, performing on stage, very much polar opposite to working in a tech career, and certainly not a tech career was certainly not where I thought necessarily that I would end up. When I did start working in tech in the early years of that as well, while I still thought it was maybe a temporary thing I was going to do, I also studied psychology as well. What I've learned is that both of those things ended up being some of the most useful skills when it comes to cybersecurity, and I would never have anticipated it in advance. Nor when people are asking me, what should I study when I want to work in cybersecurity, nor would any of them have been on my list of things to recommend that people study. But absolutely, they've made a huge difference for me. And I'll talk a little bit more about why that is when I get into it. But I'm the kind of person who likes to tackle a challenge as such. Am I definitely showing the right screen, or am I showing my? Because
Says my journey. So we can see the qualifications, the passion for problem solving, and impact driven work as well.
cool, you don't see
Yeah.
the notes or anything like
No, no,
that.
no. No, we can't. I can see. Oh, hang on. Bear with me just two
No
seconds.
worries. I just see it's
There is
high.
notes, but they're blank. I can't
I
see any.
showing
Yeah.
the wrong screen. That's why. Here's me going. What's happening there? Why is it highlighting that screen? It's not like
I
we didn't
think I
practice.
think you're potentially having the same issue I had when on my first one.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
But
like we haven't just practiced this right beforehand. Do it. I'm just thinking that doesn't look right. Why is there a big green dot on it? That's more
yeah,
like
that
it.
looks perfect. There we go.
Just get my notes up again. Well, I actually don't have any notes written in my notes, it's just so I can see which slide is coming next. Because I know, well, if I can't talk about myself, there's very little that I can do, in fairness, is there? So anyway, coming back here, so that should be a bit better now. You've got the full screen. So yeah, one thing I love to do is to take on a challenge. I love nothing more than if somebody gives me a task that seems impossibly over complex, or um something that's going to take a long time or be difficult to do, regardless of it being in cybersecurity. I've always thought there's surely an easier way to do this, um, and I've brought that to everything that I've done. And it's kind of like I see it as a challenge now. How can we make something more efficient or faster or easier to do? But then alongside that, I like to do things that mean something. I'm sure a lot of people do, and I'm sure a lot of people like to work just for money, and that's also all right too, because if it achieves whatever your goals are outside of work. For me, I liked what I learned is when I started making an impact on people in my early years in support and seeing the benefit of that. I really, really thrived in that environment. So when I got into my first tech role, it's nearly 20 years ago now, I took a job in a tech company logging cases in a support queue. So I wasn't technically doing any skilled or technical work. It was just taking all the details from whoever called in, putting them into a case queue, and then pushing that out to the support team. Now, like any good support team, there's never enough people on it, and there's always more queries that come in. So over time, I just started to answer a lot of the questions when they came in. The ultimate is turn it off and turn it on again. But apart from that, I did learn a few bits, and as people log their requests with us, I used to just put it in my name, answer the question, and close it off. And I eventually then got to a point where I was closing as many cases as anyone that was in the support team. So I got a role then in the support team, which was my first official technical role, I guess, in there. And I learned a lot from my peers, from just being the kind of person that pokes and prods anything technical. I always believed you can't really break it unless you pick it up and throw it out a window. You know, most things can be reversed, so there's plenty to be learned by clicking on everything. Um, in the first company that I worked in, I was there for 10 years, and by the time I finished my 10 years out of it, I was their IT coordinator. So I ran everything from upgrades, new rollouts, starting to transition things to the cloud, to physical network, setting up new starters in multiple different sites, for multiple different organizations that were sub organizations of the one that I worked for. So when I say it out loud, it seems kind of crazy that there was so much variety in what I learned, and I just got on with doing it. Like, say, passion for problem solving. So find something that needs to be done and then get it done. So I was the only person, kind of, it was a one person team. We used to pull in some of the support teams to help with it, but there was maybe 200 employees in the company. And then I got to a point where I thought, I'm a bit bored. It's a family owned company, and there was nothing else that I could really do unless I wanted to like marry somebody who owned it, which was not really on my radar. But what I did was I asked them, could I study cybersecurity? Could we do something along those lines? And at the time, the reaction was very much, I know that's not really a thing. No one's going to be interested in or bothered in that. So I was trying to figure out what to do to stay amused. I didn't want to be doing the kind of same old forever. So I thought I'll have a look around. Now, bear in mind that because I didn't have a degree at that stage, I was considered um, unskilled going out into the workplace. So if I was looking for a role anywhere else except in this company, the impression I was given is that I couldn't be hired anywhere else because I didn't have a degree. What I did learn, though, through the public sector and having a look at roles that were available there, was that 10 years of work in the area was considered the equivalent to a degree. When I think about it now, it's crazy, and I'm sure it's still the case in some places. So as soon as I hit the 10-year mark, I started applying for roles everywhere and anywhere that were to do with cybersecurity. At the time, Tenable was starting up in Ireland. It was about to, I want to say, open their first Irish office, but it was a full year later before they opened the physical office. And I downgraded myself as such, and put myself, I applied for a first frontline support role again because I didn't believe that I was worth more than that at the time because I didn't have a degree, even though I had 10 years of skills that were more than valuable at the time. Anyway, got my role, went into a different environment, a very different environment in Tenable, where I was very much supported and egged on and encouraged for whatever it was that I wanted to do, and which meant that I thrived in that environment. So I had 7 promotions in almost 10 years, and eventually left them nearly 2 years ago now, um, as a global security engineering manager. So I had 3 teams: one that was post sales working with existing customers, one that was pre sales working with potential customers, and then one that worked on global projects. So the biggest, most complex accounts and projects across the company. My team then worked on that. So it was really juicy. And then alongside of that, I also volunteered into a role in the company on what was called the Jedi Council, which is a little bit like cringy, but it's also, I love it. I'm not going to lie. But we worked exclusively. I represented the EMEA side of things. There was somebody who represented APAC, and then 6 who represented the US side. Basically, we worked between the product team and everyone that was front facing, our customer facing, so that we could be involved in how the product evolved, represent the customer needs, and things that I was most passionate about always was representing whatever the customer wanted or the end user wanted, and making sure that they got what they paid for, experience wise or product wise. So after 10 years in Tenable, I took redundancy. I took 6 months off, and I think it might have been when I was in those 6 months off that we met, Claire. I went to more events and connected with more women all over the world. And then I went back to work. Where I'm working now is a company called Tynes, and it's automation that we work in with a primary focus on cybersecurity. So I'm still in my area, but a little bit of new flavor on top of it too. Very much considered a startup. For like 5 years in, but flying it, and like evolving fast now, and I'm in a director role in this side of things. So I still have to remind myself on the regular that the people who told me I was not qualified enough or wasn't worth what I was being paid back in those early years. Gives me a bit of a giggle now. Might have, touched a nerve back then, but it gives me a bit of a giggle now when I see that, I need to stop. I need always to stop letting other people tell me what I'm worth. And it's something that I preach a lot when it comes to anyone that I've mentored over the years then too. So that was the quick synopsis as such of my journey. But the reality for women in cybersecurity, I was looking at this figure and I was going, well, 22%, it's grown. Because when I went into it first, nearly 10 years to 11 years ago, it was 13%. But then when I do the math, I'll be like long dead by the time we ever get, you know, where we need to be. And the 22% has dropped actually since COVID. It was doing better during COVID and it dropped down again because, as we all know, women were hit a little bit harder by the remote work situation because they had the dual role more often in the childcare situations as well. And I say more often because there was definitely plenty of men on the teams that I managed who also were doing their bit at home as well. We've had many a training call and enablement call in work with a child strapped to somebody's chest and shaking a rattle and clicking buttons at the same time. But yeah, 22%, so still has a way to go. And in cybersecurity as well, the balance is a little bit better than in many other industries too. But the interesting part for me as well, and for you too, is that the 7% hold in C-level roles. So whilst there are these companies or these initiatives out there, like there's the 30% club, which is in the UK and in Ireland and a bunch of different countries, which has a focus on getting 30% of boards holding place where women hold places as such, and it goes across multiple different industries. So to see even with initiatives like that out there that we still at only 7% of C-level roles is a little disappointing, because what's most important for any women, especially ones that are stepping into the career for the first time, is that they can see the trajectory of their career. Where are they going? Like if they've only ever seen peers and maybe managers, frontline managers in roles, then why should they believe that they can go further than that in it? And people who are, focused on their career want to see where they're going. So I know, like Claire had said, we've got the BCSWomen here and the other women's group, Women in Tech in Birmingham, and I'm involved heavily on the WiCyS, which is Women in Cybersecurity, the UKI affiliate side of things. One of the things we introduced last year was an executive women's group in it. So we now have early careers and academic. We support student affiliates as well, all the way through to advancement and then all the way through to executive, where we literally have a group of executive women in cybersecurity, specifically to have that visibility for other women that are coming into cybersecurity to see that it is possible. They do exist. They actually are happy and enjoy their roles as well. So there isn't a dead end to your career. If you do decide to go into cybersecurity, you can actually go to those C-level roles. And then another one that didn't surprise me is the 16% of teams that have no women. So whilst I have worked in tech and then in security, in tech for 20 years, the last 10, 11 being in security, and the first time I worked on a team with a woman on it was probably about 7 years ago. Um, and she was somebody that I hired into that role. But prior to that, I never worked in a team with another woman on it. It was such an anomaly for me, and it was so exciting to have another woman in the role. And even though we had nothing in common other than being women, it was still exciting for it to happen, and it sort of opened up the floodgates then for more women to get involved there, which shows exactly why representation matters for sure. And then, why specifically does diversity in cybersecurity matter? Of course, it matters everywhere. It matters in all tech. But there's something about the cybersecurity side where we'll see an additional benefit in it. What you'll see if you poke around enough is that in the cybersecurity industry, there's definitely an appetite for recruiting neurodivergence. I'm a neurodivergent, didn't know until a few years ago, so I can't say I was recruited for it. But when you're looking into things like development and say pattern identification and I want to say gut feeling, but I'm sure it has a better term on it than that. There's some attributes under the neurodivergent side that actually work especially well in the cybersecurity industry too. Especially that from the rigor to the gut feeling side, there's a lot of change and animosity and uh, oh, just everything moves so fast on the cybersecurity side of things that to be able to um, tap into any skill that's slightly different to the norm is going to help that team, not just that individual, but that team be more successful there too. So it's not just about having representation from every team. It's one of the few industries where you can see the people in those teams thrive. So let's say, for example, when you hear about hackers, like what we're learning, and I was at an event, Black Hat actually. There was a guy who wrote a book. I'm sure the book is there somewhere. Who used to work for BBC, and he talks about how the majority of hackers these days are actually kids. They're all teenagers. So if you've got a team that's full of middle-aged men and women, what are you missing? You know, you need to have that visibility, that thought, that we can relate to who's actually attempting to attack people. It's so important to be able to do that. So, in the same vein, if you're going to make the assumption that all hackers are in hoodies in the basement and they're, 30-year-old men with no children, then you're in for a spot of bother there, because many of them do have children. Many of them, it's an actual formal industry that they're involved in. They go to work like any of the rest of us would, and they come home at the end of the day. So they're keeping families and earning a salary from it. So the assumption that there are only one type of people protected by and understood by only one type of people is very naive, and would definitely have an impact on the success of any company that's trying to get to develop within the cybersecurity industry. If you have any questions, by the way, go ahead and throw them into the chat as we go, and I can get to them into the Q&A afterwards, or we can do them then after from there. But just if you think of it, if you're like me, you want to write it in while you think of it, because I'd forget it at the end of the day. So things we're seeing change now this year and this year forward as such. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more on the AI side of things, and I say it's reshaping both attacks and defense. What the biggest challenge for AI right now is twofold. One is fear. Everyone's afraid of it. It's going to take my job. I don't understand how it works. I can't tell the difference when I'm being targeted by AI and when I'm not. And on the other side, then there's the pure advancement of it, how fast it's moving. I don't know about you, but even watching AI videos these days, it's getting harder and harder to be able to tell what's true and what isn't. So how do you protect yourself from something that you can't see? Basically, you can't see the difference of it from there. And what I'm learning, being in the industry, is that there's an appetite for all companies to be using AI, but a lack of confidence or knowledge in how to use it safely, and how to police it without feeling like you're policing it. So which means there's a tendency then to push forward into something that people aren't fully covered in, is the best way to put it, or fully protected. If you imagine, you're given a brand new laptop tomorrow and it's not got Windows updates on it, the chances are that your IT team will insist that your Windows updates are installed and in place before you start using your machine on the internet. Yeah, with things like AI, we're pushing out and people are getting access to it and using it without any formal training on it, or even any sit down conversation about how to use it, where the data is being saved, how the data is being used, what you should or shouldn't put into it, and what's a useful purpose for it too. As a lot of people say to me, like, it's just giant Google. Well, yeah, but it's almost wasteful to use it as giant Google. So, if people are afraid of it or don't know a whole lot about it, then they're in a much weaker situation when it comes to protecting themselves. And those who are not afraid of it and do know a lot about it are the ones that are generally implementing the attacks against the others. Cloud security. Cloud security is something we've all talked about for years, but we're actually seeing people genuinely move everything into the cloud now where they haven't done before. And there's a lot of conversations happening across Europe and the EU. I know it's less of an issue there on the UK, but around data residency, and the UK had the same concerns about data residency as well, especially with the current situation in the States. And cloud security is really important for that. Like, where is your data located? What are the security measures you have in place? How easy is it to just lift and drop that data? And then automation skills. There's an expectation for people to do more with less all the time. So we want to get the same job done or the job of two people done, but we've only got one person that can do it. So how do we implement new tools so that they can do two people's jobs by themselves or do a better job? So a lot of people most people I know anyway, that would have gotten into cybersecurity would have chosen to do so because it was cool and it was interesting and it was changing and it was an evolving topic and there was always something new happening all the time. And then they get into it. And what they find is that spend a lot of time living in logs and running investigations and wading through tons and tons and tons of data and not actually getting to do the stuff that they wanted to do in the first place. The automation side of things is letting people do that. So you can use that to wade through all the data, find whatever it is that you want to find, and then you can spend your time upskilling, researching, and getting to grips with new technology so that you can get ahead of the challenges. So if you were to ask most cybersecurity teams in most industries, with the exception of maybe the tech industry where you'd expect it to be faster, you'll find that most of them are behind the curve. They're figuring out they're only finding out what challenges they have that and how old those are and trying to get to things that have been in existence on their systems for X amount of time as opposed to anticipating what might come down the road. Zero trust architecture we've talked about forever, but now there's an expectation that it has to happen as opposed to it being something that should or we'd like to happen. And then diverse career paths. So this is one of my favorite bits to talk about is that don't assume a career in cybersecurity means you're going to come in, you're going to hack. No, that's one little teeny tiny part of it, and it's the bit people talk about the most. I think is either coming in and doing ethical hacking or coming in and doing incident response and investigation. They're two big parts of it. They're kind of cool, so everybody talks about them all the time. But in every company that puts forward cybersecurity, whether it's as a service or a tool that's being used, they also need every other aspect of that business. They need people in marketing, people in enablement, people in sales who understand the technology. And then in companies where cybersecurity isn't what they're selling or creating, they still need people who can translate. I always think that the hardest skill to get in cybersecurity is a soft skill where people can make sense of it to everybody else in the company. So I'm sure everybody here has some kind of mandatory cybersecurity training that you have to do as part of work or even in university. And 9 times out of 10, that's maybe a couple of videos or some click through pictures and screens where you're given a multi choice question and you answer it, and maybe it takes 10 minutes and you do it once a year, and it's probably been the same for the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, it serves a purpose. It's a tick box for the company in order to say, well, you've had your cybersecurity training. But what if you don't understand it? What if you don't understand all of the terminology that's being given to you or how it really affects you as an end user of a computer? How you might be targeted specifically as a particular end user, or in the particular industry that you're in, or that you might be targeted through your social media and not through your work computer. Everyone makes the assumption it's going to come through my work email or it's going to come through my work mobile. Not necessarily. But what we need is more and more people who can make sense of it to everybody in the company. So it's all well and good for the cybersec team or the IT team or the security team or all of the technical side of the business to really deeply understand all of the challenges of cybersecurity. Um, if the rest of the company don't know nor care, then you might as well lick walls for a living. You need to make sure that everybody understands, whether it's the person that unlocks the building at the beginning of the day or it's the CEO of that company appreciating what the impact is of their own actions. And if you can translate to all of those, then you have a very unique skill that most people don't. And that unique skill is super valuable in cybersecurity. Super valuable. And it's something that with more AI being involved, more technology being involved, is something that is more in demand. You'll see it coming up if you go through job specs for cybersecurity roles. You'll see more and more people focusing in on soft skills where they wouldn't maybe have been mentioned and certainly wouldn't have been a focus before, and that tends to be why. So a lot of people are pumping information into AI, asking questions, getting answers, and trusting those answers. But if you've got an individual who's able to translate the answers into ways that make sense so that you query it, then you're into better cybersecurity practices from there. And then you'll need not just the technical side, that's the technical side, you need the strategy side. So again, if you're a company that's not a cybersec company and you're the one that's motivating the AI enablement or encouraging people to use it and use it wisely, that can change the directory in a good way for a company and the productivity and potentially then revenue for that company as well. And then on the leadership side, we're back to the soft skills are so important then from there, but to be able to see the bigger picture of how things are developing and where they're going. And if there's one industry that changes fast, it's cybersecurity. I always say somebody who has 2 years of experience in cybersecurity is probably as valuable as somebody who has 10. I probably shouldn't say that because I have the 10, you know. But if you've done done training or spent time in it, you'll find that it changes about every 2 years. It changes almost entirely. The core stuff is still the same. 50% of your job is still telling people change your password, stop sticking on a post-it under your keyboard. But the other side of things, where there's a lot of technical stuff to be learned, it changes so fast that about every 2 years you're going to need to learn new skills and keep on top of it from there. So being a woman in tech leadership, I think when I started to do it first, I tried to be a man. That's the best way that I can put it. I tried to be a stereotype of a guy who was leading in a tech role. And then I had to sort of course correct myself pretty quickly, because the thing that I found that was both unique and valuable to me was doing the authenticity side of things. How can I expect other women to see roles in cybersecurity as ones that are attainable to them if I'm not going to act like me when I'm in that role? That just shows people that I can't trust the system to support me as who I am as an individual and as a woman in that role. So I've stuck to that, and strangely enough, my career has done so much better since I started to embrace that authenticity. But also now, the more senior that I get, the more capability and control I have over the environment that I'm in. So when I talk about speaking up strategically, it's about just calling people out and going, why is there only 4 men on that panel? I don't want to speak if you're going to put me in as either the token woman or if you don't have more women speakers, for events and things like that. The higher up the chain you get, obviously, the more people will listen to you, but the more I do it, the more other women will do it then too. And it wasn't easy in the beginning, because bear in mind, my technical career was in an entirely male environment, and I was not encouraged to speak up or have an opinion because I was also underqualified, remember, and overpaid apparently. So stay quiet, get on with it, take what you get, and be happy with that. So to have to pivot on that and change it completely, and most of that was down to being in an environment where I was supported when I worked in Tenable, and that was a game changer then for me. Most importantly, then, to lift other people as well. So I do a lot of mentoring. I also like to think differently about people that I bring into roles too. Anywhere I can make a difference, then I will. The real challenge is then for a woman who's in cybersecurity, and especially in leadership and cybersecurity. You'll see these are probably the same for all of you, regardless of whether you're in cybersecurity or regardless of whether you're a leader or you're in your first day in it. If you're finding yourself as the only woman, finding that work-life balance challenge as well, how to manage the family and all of the mental load, whilst also trying to push for your career as well. That doesn't change, I think, in any industry. But in cybersecurity, it's about finding a community that's going to support you while you do that. So whether it's people like BCS, or whether it's in my case as well, people like WiCyS, that community has been the absolute rock when I've had a wobble or I've needed that boost, especially with the imposter syndrome side of things, where I'm like, oh my gosh. They've been the 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 core of all of the support that I've needed over time. So your network that you're building with other women and allies within the community is going to be the most valuable thing you'll ever have, and it's never too early to do it. And you don't even need to think too hard about it. I found when I was applying for roles in other companies, I would reach out to a woman, whether I knew her or not, ask her if she'd hop on a call for 10 minutes so I could ask her questions about the company and see if it was a fit for me. And I have yet to come across a woman who doesn't give me the honest truth of all of it. It's like an unwritten rule. We'll just look after each other because we don't want to be treated. We don't want somebody else to be treated in a way we wouldn't want to be treated. So it's a really valuable thing to have. So my career advice for you with regards things that I've seen actually work and things that I've used over the years since COVID, when I started mentoring during COVID, I've probably mentored about 160 people since then. And these are some of the things that we've talked about that have worked well for them, regardless of what stage of their career that they're at, and regardless of what their ultimate goal is. Um, and the main one is that you don't have to have everything figured out. I don't. I don't claim to. And every day I learn something new, and every day I'm reminded of how little I know. So just because you're at the early stage of your career doesn't mean that you're any more or less capable than somebody who's further along in their career. And certainly that you're any less valuable. Don't let anybody tell you that. Just know that what you've done so far is what you've done so far. So if you have done, let's say you were a teacher, now you decided you want to get into cybersecurity, that doesn't mean that all the time you spent as a teacher is not valuable, useful, and that you have to wipe the slate clean and start all over again. Absolutely not. Just think creatively about how you can take those skills into cybersec. You can do enablement. You can clearly present. You've got endless patience. Like every single thing that you've ever done before is going to be useful in cybersecurity. So don't underestimate the use of the skills you've had in the past. I never thought that psychology or theater would be useful in cybersecurity, and they're by far the most useful things that I've had. And then when I say build in public, as you're progressing to whether you're just gone into your career or you're about to go into your career in cybersecurity, let everybody know what you're doing. If you're studying, put it up there. If you're attending events, put it up there. Everybody likes to see, like it's a small community in cybersecurity, and everybody likes to see who else is out there. And that community builds really, really quickly when you start being vocal about where you're at, what you want to achieve, what you've done, where you're going. You'd be surprised how quickly it builds. I put a post up on my LinkedIn last week about I'm going to the WiCyS conference in March. Who's going for the first time? Anyone want to be there that wants to meet up? And I got a ton of messages back from people that want to meet up. It's that easy to do it. So go for it. Put yourself out there. And then, like I say, network strategically, I've mentioned a couple of times, but yeah, any of your women's networks, and you're not restricted to only joining one either. Join as many of them as you want that are useful to you, and make as many friends as what you're going to make as well in there. But my favorite thing to ask people to do is to say yes to opportunities that scare you. So whether that is somebody said, let's meet for a coffee and have a chat, and you're really shy and you're like, God, I couldn't think of anything worse right now than actually having to go meet somebody for coffee. Do it anyway. I've done that and it's led to some really, really interesting things that I never would have thought it would have led to. I said that I wanted to get involved in things to do with women in tech. So I agreed to myself that I would say yes to anything that came up. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I have 4 kids. I was commuting 5 hours a day, 5 days a week. And I was like, I don't know. I want to get involved in this, but I don't know how it's going to work. So I just said I would say yes to anything from handing out leaflets to doing webinars. And within 9 months, I was on a main stage in the convention centre in Dublin, speaking in front of 1,200 people. So yeah, it leads to really, really interesting things. Just tell yourself you're going to say yes and do it. As simple as that. So the key takeaways I have for you today really are that you don't need that traditional path to succeed. Everything that you have done already, whether you're 24 or whether you're 64, are all useful for a career in cybersecurity. Everything. There's no exceptions there. You'd be surprised at how useful those things can be and how you can relate to different types of people. And we need to relate to everybody. Cybersecurity applies to everybody, not just the techies. And we need that diverse perspective. So I talked about neurodivergence, women, allies, men, and people from different races and religions, ages, doesn't matter. All of it. The more diverse, the better. The more we're going to have different views on things. And then your voice, no matter how small you might feel that is, your voice does matter. Whether you're asking questions or you're telling people about things that you've done or you're just introducing yourself to people and saying hello, it all matters. It's all building a network. And every time you post something, if it's on your LinkedIn and even if it's just asking a question, somebody somewhere is reading that and also getting benefit from it too. You'd be surprised. I'm always surprised. You'd be surprised. And then if you do choose to go down the leadership route, know that it's about the impact and not the titles. I know that to some people it really matters the titles that they have, but when you get recognition for it, if that's what you want, or when you really feel like your career is succeeding, it's usually down to individual people saying to you that you helped me with this, or I did X, Y, and Z because you gave me the confidence or the tools to do so. And damn, that's so much better than any title or a raise or promotion ever anywhere. It's so much better than that. So yeah, they're my takeaways for you today. And then I have my LinkedIn detail there. And yeah, we can move on to questions then if anybody has any.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was absolutely amazing. And I've put a couple of questions myself in the chat. But what I'll do is I'll address that. There's one question I'll address first, and then I'll go into some of the ones I thought might benefit everyone in the session. So this one is from, hang on, Bemidale. Um, so, how would you advise someone with varied background in IT, data, ERP, problem solving background? Um, Sorry, I'm just reading it out as it is.
Yeah.
ISC2 CC qualification to pivot into cybersecurity as their first role. So, is there any sort of advice that
So
you'd
you
give?
already have a ton of useful skills and tools in there. Really, when I look at that, I wouldn't be worried about getting into your first role. What I'd be thinking about is what would you like to do for your first role? Because with things like data ERP and ISC2, you can go into incident investigation. You can go into support somewhere if you want to in it. You can, there's a lot of different places you can go in. So I would think about which parts of it you love the most. And like, so you've mentioned problem solving background by yourself there. I would probably look at um like the consultancy almost side of things. That doesn't mean that you have to work for yourself. It just means that somewhere where you get an opportunity to get in front of prospects and customers and listen to what their problems are and tell them how to do the best they can with what they've got. I'll always love to say the best they can, but that's down to whatever tools you have available to you or whatever budget you have available to you. So that could be any company, whether it's internally in the company, understanding what their challenges are that they're trying to become compliant to certain standards, or whether it's into something like a vendor company where you'll be speaking with prospects all the time, or into consultancy from there. But the skills that you have already um, are so useful and that a lot of people in cybersecurity already don't have. So really sit down and think about what you love the most about what you do, and then you'll be able to define a role then from there. That'd be what I would do.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. There was a question from me, and I picked up around when you discussed AI as well, obviously it's new and it's quite emerging, and a lot of organizations want it, but they obviously don't know how to use it responsibly and safely. And we're all just, as an industry, I guess we're all figuring it out. Is there anything in the cybersecurity space that's new innovation to try and make AI more safer to use? Would you say there's anything you've come across that's kind of really new that they're trying to bring in, like a piece of technology or policy or anything?
So there's an EU policy coming in, and normally, to be
Yeah,
fair, even with the changes with EU and Brexit, still tends to
yeah,
be alignment anyway in in all the countries. But I'm thinking of Ireland and England there, obviously.
yeah,
The start, that's the first instant of it. The only concern I have around things like that is it's not moving nearly as fast as the AI is moving, but at least it's the
yeah,
start. So for smaller industries or folk that are trying to figure out, well, what's the base level here that I need to align to or need to understand, that new EU regulation is a good place to begin. What I would encourage you if companies are involved, like let's say they're government bodies or in a big industry like fintech or something like that, like there's opportunity right now to get involved in the making of those compliance regulations,
yeah,
so which no longer happens in many of the other industries because those committees and all are long since established. But right now there's still the opportunity to be involved and have a say. So what better way to get familiar with compliance regulations than to be involved in the writing of them? I know there was a call out there in the last couple of weeks for people to join like the EU Committee for Writing Regulation. It's like, really? That doesn't exist already, which is a little concerning, but at least people were going to
yeah,
get involved in it. So yeah, my thinking with that is that the regulation moves slowly, but if it's moving that slowly, then there's no excuse for people to not be able to align with it. And it's kept so doable too. So if
yeah,
that's your bottom line, that's your ultimate goal is like, this is what I'm going to make sure is in place. You're the you're the best protected you can be with regards insurance and stuff like that too if you've aligned to compliance. you can always be more protected than you currently are. I mean, unless we turn everything off and go back to pencil and paper, that's probably the best protected we all can be. But there's always other standards you can put in place from there. But the best way to do it is to start with that bare minimum, that EU one, and get to grips with what's expected. It's actually a lot more doable and digestible than people might think. And there's a fear of even reading the first one, but I would start there.
I think I've just thought of a question actually myself that might benefit the group because we've had a lot of questions around, we had the question around career and how to pivot. Is there any sort of articles or books that inspired you throughout your career and you felt like, wow, I actually learned a lot from those articles or books?
Yeah, weirdly, the chimp paradox is one that I really, really love. It helped me to get out of my own way, as people might. I think
Yeah.
probably even a book that's called "Get Out of My Own Way." The chimp paradox was because it's about the psychology of people as well. So you can apply it to sales, to tech, to parenthood, whatever you want to do. But it's a really I like things to be explained to me in multiple different ways so that I'm sure I've understood it right. And the chimp paradox covers it really, really well.
Wow.
So for me, and I listen to it on an Audible as well because I haven't the patience to sit down and read a book. So, and the Audible version of it is actually pretty good too. So I would recommend that one to start with, just to make you think, am I actually doing the best for myself?
Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
in my own way? And that's a good place to start for sure.
And another question from me, guys, do put some questions into the chat if you do have them. I feel like I'm asking a lot of questions. Um, I was taken back about, I'm always taken back about stats around, how many women are in, sort of, for example, in my space technical roles. I know it's the same in cybersecurity and other areas of IT. What do you think is the main thing that we need to do in the tech industry, to recommend, like, to encourage more women into tech? What would you recommend would be the, the thing that the industry needs to do to change?
I think companies as a whole need to get put their people out front. Their people are their brand. Like I found when I was in Tenable, I joined my first leadership team. I was the first woman in that leadership team leading people. And I was the first woman in the SE team as well before I became a leader. But I had never had any problem recruiting women into my team, which you should say, well, if there's only guys across the whole thing, then that should have been just as difficult for me as it was for anybody else. The only difference was that I talked all the time. Like if I really believe in something, I will talk about it on my social media.
Yeah.
If you see me being suspiciously quiet about a place I work in, it's probably a really good indicator that I don't really rate it. That's a term. Obviously I talk a lot about time, so I can say that one. But if I don't believe it's somewhere that is safe and supports women and diverse people, then I won't talk about it. I simply won't talk about it. Under pressure, maybe. But when I was in Tenable, I talked all the time about the different communities that I was involved in. We used to have Pride at Tenable, and I set up a group called Diversibility, which was for neurodivergence and people with disabilities. There's women at Tenable, all those groups, and it wasn't just for talking sake. I talked about all the initiatives that we did and how we got together and how we made a difference. And then I found when I posted a role in my team, I had no problem. I used to get 50, 60% of the roles, the applicants were women that were coming in. So I think if you're a company that's wondering why are women not joining you, then have a look at your website and have a look at your job descriptions and have a look at how you're posting your roles and see if you're a woman, can you see other women that are happy in roles there? Can you get in touch with them readily? Can you find them really easily? Because that's what we'll do. When I applied for roles, the first thing I did was look for women that were in the company and speak to them. So you need to be able to do that. And if you're not showing them visibility of that, you're only showing, I don't know, partner dinners with a whole lot of guys that are out for dinner. They're going to go, yeah, no, thank you. And they're not even going to apply. So, visibility is key.
We've got another question here. So Samantha's put a question into the chat. I'm moving into cybersecurity from a marketing and communications background. I can see that I have great transferable skills, but how do you convince recruiters that I am a good bet? I'm doing some certs with SANS and Firebrand, but wondering if there is anything else I can do.
This is one of my favorite ones because a lot of people get tapped
Yeah,
in here and they're going, I don't know, like I've got the certs and the skills and I've
yeah,
got all this stuff from the past, but still nobody. And it's right. People go, you haven't worked in cyber, man. But the what I would always recommend is get involved with whether it's your community of the women in cyber Or if you don't have time to do that and you can find an hour a month, get in touch with some of your local groups and charities. If there could be a scouting group where you go, okay, you're running a Facebook page. I'd like to come in and help run and make sure that it's secure from a cybersecurity perspective and give you a little bit of education on security and how you can protect yourself and your data and such using your Facebook page. Like it's low key, it's really not a lot of time and effort, but now you're managing cybersecurity for that scout group, or your local, I don't know, Meals on Wheels or whatever it is. There's always a group. They don't get a resource on the cybersecurity side of things. They are targeted. There's still a lot of vulnerable information, vulnerable people information that's accessible in those groups and they've no idea how to protect themselves unless they happen to have a volunteer that works in cybersecurity. So for anyone I know who's trying to get experience in it where nobody will give them experience, I say, okay, well, if you can find 1 hour a month, even you can get yourself experience in those roles. It's just as valid. They're still a business like anybody else. Doesn't matter if it's a multi-million-dollar bank, billion, whatever, or it's a small charity. It's still the same skills you're putting in place for those. So I would recommend doing something like that. And if it's somewhere close to home, it's going to be handier again for you.
Oh, brilliant. That is brilliant advice. I think as well, I'm sort of in the change and testing space, but I also learn a lot from my own IT security team. So, Samantha, if you've got an IT team where you are at the moment, maybe see if you can book in some shadowing sessions with that team as well, see what you can pick up and what you can learn, because I think that would be a good thing just to see how in real life things work as well in that space.